The sky over the northern Montana territory darkened long before night had any right to arrive. Clouds rolled low and heavy, stained the color of dull iron, pressing down on the open land as if trying to crush it flat. Wind swept across the plains in sharp, cutting waves, lifting dry grass and frozen dirt into the air. The smell of snow rode that wind, bitter and certain. Ethan Cole felt it settle into his bones as he guided his horse along the ridge above Cold Elk Creek. He was 23 years old, yet his face already carried lines carved by work, loss, and long silence. He rode alone, as he had done nearly every day for the past 5 years. Ethan had lived on his small ranch since he was 18, after sickness took his mother and a riding accident claimed his father the following winter. The land had been all that remained. 200 rough acres, stubborn soil, and a herd of cattle too small to promise comfort but large enough to demand constant labor. Folks in the nearest town called him distant, strange, even untouched by life. Ethan never argued. He spoke little, worked hard, and returned each night to an empty cabin that echoed with memories he refused to face. Solitude was not a choice anymore. It was simply how he survived. That afternoon, the cattle sensed danger before he did. They pressed closer together near the creek, breath steaming as the temperature dropped fast. Ethan counted them once, then again, lips moving silently. 31 head. All present. He tugged his coat tighter and scanned the horizon. The wind had changed, deepened, carrying a low roar that made his horse, Ash, shift uneasily beneath him. This was no ordinary snowstorm. This was the kind that erased trails, swallowed men whole, and left nothing behind but frozen ground and unanswered questions. "We're running out of time," Ethan muttered, urging Ash forward. He turned the herd toward lower land where the hills might break the wind. But the storm moved faster than sense ever could. Snow slammed down in thick, blinding sheets, stinging his face and soaking through his gloves within moments. The world shrank to white chaos. Sky and earth vanished into one endless blur. Ethan leaned low over Ash's neck, fighting panic as the cold clawed its way deeper into him. His fingers went numb, then his feet. Each breath burned. Ash stumbled, snorted, then lifted her head sharply. She fought the wind, forcing her body forward with sudden determination. Ethan barely had the strength to guide her, so he trusted her instinct instead. Somewhere ahead, she had caught the scent of warmth. He followed blindly, vision fading, thought slowing as fear wrapped tight around his chest. He thought of the empty cabin. Of never having known what it meant to belong to someone. The idea that this might be how he ended, alone and unseen, settled over him with terrifying calm. Then he saw it. A dim, flickering glow through the storm. At first he thought it was a trick of his failing eyes, but the light held steady, warm and alive. Fire. Shelter. Hope. Ethan slid from Ash's back and half fell, half staggered through deep snow toward the glow. It came from a cone-shaped shelter tucked into a narrow break between rock walls, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. Smoke curled from the top. Animal hides covered the entrance, glowing softly from firelight within. He stopped short, frozen in more ways than one. An Apache shelter. Old warnings echoed in his mind, words passed down by fear and ignorance. But the cold did not care about stories or skin. It only killed. Ethan raised a shaking hand and knocked weakly against the wooden pole near the entrance. "Hello," he called, his voice cracked and thin. "I'm lost in the storm. Please." The hide flap shifted. A young woman stepped into view, framed by firelight. Her dark hair was braided neatly over one shoulder, her face calm but guarded. She looked no older than 20. Her eyes moved quickly, taking in Ethan's frostbitten hands, his trembling frame, the horse swaying behind him. Another woman rose behind her, slightly older, broader in the shoulders, her stance firm and ready. Sisters. Their caution was clear, and Ethan felt the weight of it press against his chest. They spoke briefly in their own language, low and fast. The younger woman nodded once and stepped aside. "Come," she said, her English accented but steady. "Storm kills fast." Relief nearly dropped Ethan to his knees. Together, they helped him guide Ash into a sheltered crease between rocks. When Ethan's numb fingers failed him, the older sister stepped in silently and tied the reins with practiced ease. Inside the shelter, warmth hit him like a blow. His legs buckled, and he sank down near the fire as pain flared through his thawing limbs. The scent of smoke, leather, and herbs filled the air. It was grounding real. They wrapped him in a thick robe and handed him a small bowl of hot tea. The first sip burned his tongue and throat, but it dragged him back from the edge. "I'm Ethan Cole," he managed. "My ranch is south of here." The younger woman nodded. "I am Nina. This is my sister, Sora." Their voices were calm, but their eyes never left him. Trust was not given freely out here. As his body warmed, awareness returned. He realized how strange this moment was. He had spent years avoiding people, avoiding connection, convinced he needed none of it. Now he sat inside a shelter with two women who had every reason to turn him away, yet they had chosen not to. "You live here alone?" he asked quietly. "For now," Sora replied. "Just us." Ethan hesitated, then asked the question burning inside him. "Why help me?" Nina met his gaze, her eyes deep and steady. "The storm does not care who you are," she said. "Cold takes everyone the same." Something loosened inside Ethan's chest at her words. Outside, the wind howled like an angry beast, but inside the shelter there was warmth, quiet, and an unspoken understanding beginning to form. As the fire crackled and the storm raged on, Ethan realized that this night was already changing him. And when sleep finally claimed him, he did not know that the greatest conflict of his life had only just begun. Morning arrived quietly, as if the land itself were exhausted from its own violence. Ethan woke to a pale gray light filtering through the smoke hole of the shelter, so still it felt unnatural. For a long moment, he did not move. His body ached deeply, but the pain was clean, honest, nothing like the numb terror of the night before. The fire had burned down to glowing embers, and the air held a gentle warmth that surprised him. He was not alone. That realization settled over him slowly, careful not to break the fragile calm. Nina knelt near the entrance, stitching a torn hide with steady hands. Her movements were quiet and precise, as if each action carried purpose beyond survival. Sora entered moments later, brushing snow from her shoulders, her eyes sharp even in rest. "Storm is gone," she said simply. "Your horse stands strong." Ethan released a breath he had not realized he was holding. Gratitude filled his chest, awkward and heavy. "I should go," he said, though the words lacked conviction. "My cattle will be scattered." "You eat first," Nina replied, rising to hand him a wooden bowl filled with warm broth. The smell made his stomach tighten painfully. He ate slowly, aware of their watchful presence, but also of the strange comfort that came with it. Sora studied him openly, unafraid of silence. "You live alone," she said, not a question. Ethan nodded. 5 years. He expected pity. He received understanding instead. They spoke little, yet much was shared. Loss did not need long explanations. When Nina spoke of soldiers forcing her people from their land, her voice remained steady, but Ethan heard the weight beneath it. He looked at the two sisters and saw not weakness, but resilience sharpened by necessity. They had built shelter where others saw only emptiness. They had survived where many had not. His respect for them grew quietly, deeply. After eating, they stepped outside together. The land had transformed overnight. Snow blanketed the valley, softening sharp edges, reflecting the pale sun. Their camp lay hidden between rock formations, carefully placed to break the wind and conceal smoke. Ethan could not help his admiration. "You built this yourselves," he said. Nina nodded. "Women keep life going," she replied. Sora smirked. "Men boast. Land listens to women." Ethan smiled before he could stop himself. It felt strange on his face. As they spoke, Sora stiffened suddenly, her gaze locking onto the distant ridge. "Riders," she whispered. 3 figures moved against the snow, dark shapes cutting across the white land. Ethan's stomach tightened. He recognized one horse, one posture. "That's Luke Bannon," he said. "He hates anything he doesn't understand." Sora's hand moved toward her knife. Nina stepped closer to Ethan, tension sharp in her posture. "I can talk to them," Ethan said quickly. "They know me. If they see me first, maybe they'll leave." The sisters exchanged a glance, brief but heavy. Trust was a dangerous thing. Finally, Nina nodded. "We believe you." Those words struck Ethan harder than the storm ever had. He stepped forward into the open, raising his arms before the riders came too close. Luke reined in his horse, eyes narrowing. "Thought you froze out there, Cole," he called. "Found shelter," Ethan replied, his voice calm despite the pounding in his chest. Luke's gaze shifted past him, scanning the rocks. "Shelter? Ain't nothing but stone and snow here." Ethan held his ground. "That's enough," he said. "Storm's done. So are we." Luke's mouth twisted. "Funny," he muttered. "Smells like you've been hiding with the wrong kind." The insult landed hard. Before Ethan could speak, the sound of a rifle being cocked cut through the air. Sora stood on a rock ledge, weapon steady, eyes cold. Silence stretched tight. Another rider shifted uneasily. Ethan raised his hands. "Nobody's looking for trouble," he said. "They saved my life." That's all you need to know. Luke spat into the snow, glaring. After a long moment, he turned his horse. Storms got everyone tense, he muttered, riding away. When the riders disappeared, Ethan's legs nearly gave out. Sora lowered the rifle slowly.
Foolish men, she said.
Nina looked at Ethan with something warmer than caution.
You stood for us, she said.
We will remember. Ethan returned to his ranch later that day, but the land felt different. The cabin seemed smaller, colder. That night, he slept poorly, thoughts circling the glow of firelight, the sound of Nina's voice, the strength in Sora's stance. By morning, his decision was already made. He packed supplies carefully, adding a small tin of sugar after a moment's hesitation. He did not know why, only that it felt important. The ride back to the valley felt shorter, lighter. When the shelter came into view, relief washed over him. Nina stepped out first, surprise flickering across her face. You came back, she said. I said I would, Ethan replied, suddenly nervous. He offered the supplies without ceremony. Sora inspected them with raised brows. You may stay, she said. Your presence does not trouble us. Days passed, then weeks. Ethan returned often, sometimes with supplies, sometimes with nothing but himself. A rhythm formed. They shared knowledge, stories, quiet laughter. Nina taught him the uses of herbs. He showed her how to read the sky for storms. Slowly, the emptiness inside him began to fill. One afternoon, as they worked near the fire, Nina looked at him thoughtfully. You are different, she said. Before, you were hollow. Ethan swallowed. Maybe I didn't know how to live, he replied. Her small smile held promise and danger all at once. As winter loosened its grip, Ethan realized something that both frightened and steadied him. He no longer rode to the valley out of gratitude alone. He rode because his heart pulled him there, stronger with every passing day. And though peace lingered for now, he sensed it could not last forever. Spring softened the land inch by inch, loosening winter's hard grip until green shoots pushed through melting snow. Ethan felt the change inside himself as clearly as he saw it on the plains. He rode to the sisters' camp nearly every day now, no longer pretending his visits were only practical. Work waited at the ranch, fences needed mending, cattle needed watching, yet his feet and heart carried him back to the hidden valley without hesitation. Nina greeted him each time with a quiet smile that warmed him more than any fire. Sora watched closely, protective but no longer suspicious, as if weighing whether he truly belonged among them. Their days fell into an easy pattern. Ethan helped reinforce shelters, hauled water, and learned which plants healed and which harmed. Nina listened when he spoke about the land, about reading wind and clouds, about surviving drought and blizzard alike. She absorbed knowledge quickly, her curiosity sharp and thoughtful. When their hands brushed, both noticed. Neither pulled away. The closeness felt natural, yet fragile, like thin ice just strong enough to hold weight. Sora noticed everything. One evening, as Ethan and Nina sat near the fire, shaping simple beads, Sora returned from checking traps and paused, studying them. Careful, she said evenly. Attachments make targets. Nina lifted her chin. Loneliness also kills, she replied. Ethan felt both truth and warning settle into his chest. He understood Sora's fear. The world beyond this valley was not kind, especially to women like them. Still, the thought of walking away from Nina felt impossible. As the snow retreated, the sisters began preparing to move camp, packing hides and tools with quiet efficiency. When Ethan realized what was happening, a tightness gripped his chest. You're leaving, he said, unable to hide it. Sora nodded. We always move when seasons change. Nina stepped closer, her voice gentle. Not far. She pointed toward a narrow bend of creek less than 2 miles from Ethan's ranch. Hidden ground. Good water. We stay there for spring. Hope surged through him, sudden and fierce. Near me? He asked. Nina met his eyes. If that is what you want. He nodded without hesitation. Want was too small a word, but it was all he could manage. That night, Ethan helped them move through narrow ravines and quiet passes, careful not to leave signs. When they settled near the creek, something unspoken shifted. The distance between them felt gone. With the new camp came deeper closeness. Ethan and Nina spent long evenings walking by the water, speaking of things neither had shared before. He spoke of guilt, of feeling like life had passed him by. She spoke of fear, of being hunted, of wanting peace without surrender. Their shared silence held more meaning than words. When Nina finally reached for his hand, he felt years of restraint crumble. Their kiss was soft, unhurried, filled with promise rather than urgency. Sora pretended not to notice, though her softened expression betrayed her. Peace, however, never lingered long in the frontier. One afternoon, distant gunshots echoed through the valley. Ethan's blood turned cold. He rode hard, heart pounding, fear sharp as broken glass. When he reached the camp, he saw 3 armed men near the rocks, Luke Bannon among them, anger twisted across his face. Nina and Sora crouched behind cover, rifles ready. Without thinking, Ethan rode straight between them and the threat, raising his weapon.
Enough, he shouted.
You step back.
Luke sneered. So it's true, he said.
You've chosen sides. Ethan's voice shook, but his aim did not. They are my family now. Before violence could erupt, the crack of authority cut through the tension. The local sheriff rode into view, weapon drawn, eyes hard.
This ends here, he barked.
These women break no law. And Ethan Cole stands under my protection. Faced with law and resolve, the men retreated, muttering threats that carried no weight. When silence returned, Nina rushed to Ethan, hands trembling as she touched his face.
You could have died, she whispered.
Ethan rested his forehead against hers.
So could you, he replied.
Sora watched them, blinking fast, then turned away.
Storms choose strange paths, she said quietly.
That night, under a sky crowded with stars, Nina led Ethan to the fire. My people have vows, she said softly.
No paper.
No witness but flame and truth.
Ethan's breath caught.
If you choose me, she continued, I will stand with you through all seasons. Tears burned his eyes as he nodded. I choose you, he said. Sora stood behind them, her presence steady. They spoke simple words, binding promises shaped by hardship and hope. When they sealed their vows with a kiss, Ethan felt reborn. Life did not become easy, but it became full. The ranch grew stronger with shared hands. The camp thrived with safety nearby. Ethan was no longer the quiet man avoiding the world. He was a partner, a protector, a man rooted in something real. And though the frontier remained wild and uncertain, he knew this truth would carry him forward. The storm that nearly took his life had given him something greater. It had led him home.